Hey everyone, tonight we're diving into one of the most extraordinary chapters in the story of humanity. A moment so pivotal, so defining, that it literally separated us from every other creature on this planet. The day our ancestors made a decision that would echo through millions of years and ultimately lead to you sitting here watching this video. We're talking about when humans left the trees forever, or at least that's what we thought happened. But here's the thing. Everything you think you know about this moment, everything you learned in school, every documentary you've watched, it's all been turned upside down by discoveries so recent that textbooks haven't even caught up yet. The story of when we left the trees isn't just wrong, it's spectacularly, beautifully, completely wrong. Before we climb into this journey together, take a moment to like this video if you're ready to have your mind blown, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's always incredible to see how far these stories travel. Now settle in, maybe grab something to drink, and let's unravel one of the greatest mysteries in human evolution. For over a century, scientists painted a picture that seemed so logical, so obvious, that questioning it felt almost ridiculous. Our ape-like ancestors lived in the trees. The climate changed. Forests turned to grasslands, and boom, they climbed down and started walking upright across the African savanna. Clean, simple, evolutionary. The savanna hypothesis dominated textbooks, museum displays, and scientific thinking for generations. Picture it the way they told us. Millions of years ago, Africa was a lush, green paradise. Dense forests stretched across the continent, and our ancestors swung through the canopy like modern chimpanzees. Then the earth began to change. Temperatures shifted, rainfall patterns altered, and slowly but surely, those vast forests started to shrink. In their place, open grasslands spread like a golden carpet across the landscape. Our ancestors faced a choice: adapt or die. According to this traditional story, they chose to adapt in the most dramatic way possible. They climbed down from their leafy homes, stood upright on two legs, and began the long march toward becoming human. Walking upright gave them advantages on the open savanna. They could see over tall grass, spot predators from a distance, and travel efficiently across long distances. It was evolution in action, a clear cause and effect that made perfect sense. This narrative was so compelling that it shaped everything we thought we knew about human evolution. Museums built exhibits around it. Scientists structured their research to support it. And for decades, every new fossil discovery was interpreted through this lens. The savanna hypothesis wasn't just a theory. It was the foundation of human evolutionary science. But then something extraordinary happened. Scientists started finding evidence that didn't fit the story. Fossils that challenged the timeline, environmental data that questioned the climate narrative. And most shocking of all, discoveries that suggested our ancestors might have been far more sophisticated than anyone imagined. The first cracks in the traditional story appeared when researchers began studying ancient climates with unprecedented precision. Using advanced techniques to analyze soil samples, fossil pollen, and sediment cores, they reconstructed the environmental conditions of ancient Africa with stunning detail. What they found was unexpected. The transition from forest to grassland wasn't sudden or complete. Instead, Africa during the crucial period of human evolution was a complex mosaic of environments. Forests didn't just disappear and get replaced by grasslands. The reality was far more nuanced. Ancient Africa was a patchwork landscape where dense woodlands existed alongside open spaces, where rivers cut through both forest and grassland, creating a diverse ecosystem that offered multiple opportunities for survival. This wasn't the simple forest to savanna transition that scientists had imagined. It was something far more complex and interesting. Even more intriguing was the discovery that many early human ancestors lived not in open savannas, but in wooded environments. Fossil sites that had been assumed to represent grassland habitats were actually located in areas with significant tree cover. The animals found alongside early human fossils weren't savanna specialists. They were creatures that thrived in mixed woodland environments. This environmental complexity set the stage for a revolution in thinking about human evolution. If our ancestors weren't simply forced out of disappearing forests onto open grasslands, then what actually drove them to develop the extraordinary adaptations that make us human? The answer would prove to be far more fascinating than anyone had imagined. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Deep in the Isa Valley of Tanzania, researchers were studying a community of chimpanzees living in an environment that closely resembled the ancient African landscape where our ancestors evolved. These weren't typical forest chimpanzees. They lived in what scientists call a savanna mosaic environment, a complex mixture of dense forests and open grasslands. What the researchers observed changed everything. Despite living in a relatively open environment, these chimpanzees spent most of their time in the trees. But here's where it gets really interesting. When they did engage in bipedal walking, something remarkable happened. More than 85% of their upright walking occurred not on the ground, but high in the tree canopy. These chimpanzees were using bipedalism as a tree climbing strategy. They would stand upright on branches to reach food, to navigate between trees, and to move through the canopy more efficiently. Far from being a terrestrial adaptation, bipedal walking in these apes was fundamentally arboreal. They had discovered that walking upright in trees gave them access to resources and movement options that quadrupedal climbing couldn't provide. This observation hit the scientific community like a lightning bolt. If modern chimpanzees living in environments similar to those of our ancestors were using bipedalism as an arboreal strategy, then maybe the origins of human upright walking had nothing to do with leaving the trees. Maybe we learned to walk upright precisely because we stayed in the trees. The implications were staggering. Everything scientists thought they knew about the relationship between bipedalism and terrestrial life was potentially backwards. Instead of leaving the trees to walk upright, our ancestors might have developed upright walking to become better tree climbers. This revelation sent researchers racing back to examine fossil evidence with fresh eyes. What they found would completely rewrite the story of human evolution. Ancient skeletons that had been interpreted as evidence of terrestrial adaptation suddenly looked very different when viewed through the lens of arboreal bipedalism. The most famous human ancestor of all, Lucy, became the center of this revolutionary re-examination. When Lucy was discovered in 1974, she was hailed as proof that early humans had committed fully to terrestrial life. Her pelvis showed clear adaptations for upright walking, and her discovery in what was thought to be an open environment seemed to confirm the savanna hypothesis. But new technologies allowed scientists to peer inside Lucy's bones in ways that had never been possible before. High-resolution CT scans revealed the internal structure of her skeleton, and what they found was shocking. Lucy's arm bones were built like those of a chimpanzee, not a human. The internal architecture of her bones showed evidence of the kind of heavy muscle attachments needed for powerful tree climbing. Lucy hadn't abandoned the trees at all. She was living a dual lifestyle, walking upright on the ground when necessary, but spending significant amounts of time climbing and moving through the forest canopy. Her long, curved toe bones were perfectly adapted for gripping branches. Her powerful arm muscles could support her body weight as she swung through trees. Lucy was both a bipedal walker and an accomplished tree climber. The evidence didn't stop with Lucy. Every early human ancestor that scientists re-examined showed similar patterns. Australopithecus afarensis, Lucy's species, displayed clear sexual dimorphism in their relationship with trees. The smaller females showed more pronounced arboreal adaptations, suggesting they spent more time in the canopy, possibly foraging for food or avoiding ground-based predators. The larger males, while still capable tree climbers, showed slightly more terrestrial adaptations. This pattern made perfect evolutionary sense. In a complex mosaic environment, the ability to exploit both arboreal and terrestrial resources would have been an enormous advantage. Our ancestors weren't forced to choose between trees and ground. They chose both. The discovery of even earlier human ancestors pushed this story back further in time. Ardipithecus ramidus, known affectionately as Ardi, lived 4.4 million years ago and showed an even more dramatic combination of arboreal and terrestrial adaptations. Ardi had a grasping big toe, perfect for life in the trees, combined with pelvic adaptations that allowed for primitive bipedal walking. But Ardi's locomotion was unlike anything seen in modern primates. She didn't knuckle walk like chimpanzees, she didn't swing through trees like orangutans, and she didn't walk like modern humans. Instead, she used a unique form of locomotion that combined careful climbing through trees with primitive upright walking on the ground. Ardi had invented a completely new way of moving through the world. The environment where Ardi lived provided crucial context for understanding this unique adaptation. Her fossils were found alongside evidence of dense woodland environments. This wasn't the open savanna that the traditional hypothesis required. Ardi lived in forests, and her adaptations were specifically designed to thrive in complex arboreal environments while also allowing limited terrestrial travel. Even more revolutionary was the discovery that the internal temperature structure of forests might have driven the initial development of terrestrial behavior. Recent research revealed that forest canopies can be 5 to 7 degrees Celsius hotter than the forest floor. During the hottest parts of the day, the ground level of forests provided a cooler, more comfortable environment than the scorching upper canopy. This temperature gradient offered a compelling explanation for how terrestrial behavior could have evolved within forested environments. Our ancestors didn't need open savannas to start spending time on the ground. They just needed hot days and the intelligence to recognize that the forest floor offered thermal relief from the blazing canopy. The extending of dry seasons and the gradual reduction of forest area would have amplified this temperature-driven pattern. As forests became more seasonal and hot periods lasted longer, our ancestors would have spent increasing amounts of time on the cooler forest floor. Gradually, they would have developed the anatomical and behavioral adaptations necessary for ground-level survival. This thermal model explains how the transition from purely arboreal to semi-terrestrial life could have been gradual and environment-driven, rather than sudden and crisis-driven. Our ancestors weren't refugees fleeing disappearing forests. They were intelligent creatures making adaptive choices about how to use their complex environments most effectively. The story becomes even more fascinating when we examine the fossil record of the very earliest possible human ancestors. Sahelanthropus chidensis, nicknamed Tumai, lived approximately 7 million years ago in what is now Chad. This discovery shattered geographical assumptions about human evolution, proving that our earliest ancestors had spread across Africa much earlier and more widely than anyone had imagined. Tumai lived in an environment that couldn't have been more different from today's Sahara Desert. 7 million years ago, the region was a lush lakeside paradise with extensive forests and grasslands. This environmental richness provided the perfect setting for the earliest experiments in human evolution. Our ancestors weren't struggling to survive in harsh, marginal environments. They were thriving in some of the most abundant and diverse ecosystems Africa had ever seen. The discovery of Tumai revolutionized our understanding of early human evolution in ways that extended far beyond simple geography. When paleontologists first uncovered this ancient skull, they found themselves face to face with a creature that defied easy categorization. Tumai possessed a mixture of ape-like and human-like features that challenged everything scientists thought they knew about the pace and pattern of human evolution. The skull revealed a brain case that was distinctly ape-sized, yet the face projected forward less dramatically than modern chimpanzees. The brow ridges were prominent, but not as pronounced as those found in gorillas. Most intriguingly, the foramen magnum, the hole where the skull connects to the spine, was positioned in a way that suggested this creature might have held its head upright, a potential early indicator of bipedal posture. But Toomai's significance extends beyond anatomical features. The environment where this ancient ancestor lived provides crucial insights into the conditions that shaped early human evolution. 7 million years ago, the region that is now the heart of the Sahara Desert was a water-rich landscape dotted with lakes and rivers. Fossil evidence from the same geological layers reveals an ecosystem teeming with life. Crocodiles basked along riverbanks, elephants browsed in woodlands, and antelopes grazed in open meadows. This wasn't a marginal environment forcing desperate adaptations. It was a landscape of abundance and opportunity. Our earliest ancestors weren't clinging to survival in the face of environmental catastrophe. They were experimenting with new ways of life in some of the richest ecosystems the continent had ever supported. The traditional narrative of environmental stress driving human evolution suddenly seemed inadequate to explain the complexity of what was actually happening. The fossil record from this period reveals something even more remarkable. Multiple species of early hominins were experimenting with different evolutionary strategies simultaneously. While Toomai was developing his unique combination of traits in Central Africa, other lineages were pursuing different adaptations in eastern and southern regions of the continent. Human evolution wasn't a single story unfolding in one location. It was a continent-wide experiment with multiple species, testing different approaches to survival and reproduction. This diversity of early human ancestors suggests that the transition from ape-like ancestors to human-like descendants was far more complex than a simple linear progression. Instead of one species gradually evolving into another, we see evidence of what scientists call adaptive radiation. Multiple species were spreading across different environments, each developing unique solutions to the challenges and opportunities they encountered. The implications of this discovery forced scientists to reconsider fundamental assumptions about human evolution. If multiple early human species were thriving in diverse environments across Africa, then the story of human origins couldn't be reduced to a simple narrative about climate change forcing adaptations. Something more nuanced and interesting was happening. Advanced dating techniques revealed that these diverse early human species weren't just contemporaries, they were actively coexisting and potentially interacting for millions of years. The human family tree wasn't a straight line with occasional branches. It was a complex bush with multiple lineages exploring different evolutionary possibilities. Some of these experiments succeeded and led to modern humans. Others represented evolutionary dead ends that teach us about the paths not taken in human development. The environmental data from this period paints a picture of Africa as a continent in transition, but not in the simple, linear way that earlier theories had suggested. Instead of uniform climate change driving uniform evolutionary responses, different regions of Africa were experiencing different environmental pressures. This geographic and climatic diversity created a natural laboratory where different evolutionary strategies could be tested simultaneously. In the lake-rich environments of Central Africa, early hominins like Toomai were developing one set of adaptations. In the increasingly seasonal woodlands of Eastern Africa, other species were pursuing different strategies. In the complex mosaic landscapes of Southern Africa, still other lineages were experimenting with their own unique approaches to survival. Each environment presented different challenges and opportunities, and our ancestors responded with remarkable creativity and flexibility. This geographic diversity in early human evolution helps explain why the fossil record is so rich and complex. We're not looking at a single species slowly changing over time. We're examining the remnants of a grand evolutionary experiment that played out across an entire continent over millions of years. The diversity we see in the fossil record reflects the diversity of environments and evolutionary pressures that our ancestors encountered. The study of ancient DNA has added another layer of complexity to this story. While DNA preservation in African fossils remains challenging due to the continent's warm climate, advances in molecular techniques have begun to reveal glimpses of the genetic relationships between these early human species. What emerges is a picture of populations that were sometimes isolated and sometimes connected, with periods of genetic exchange alternating with periods of independent evolution. This pattern of connection and isolation created ideal conditions for evolutionary innovation. When populations were separated by geographic barriers or environmental changes, they developed unique adaptations to their local conditions. When barriers broke down and populations reconnected, successful innovations could spread rapidly through the broader human population. This process of innovation and exchange may have been crucial in driving the rapid evolutionary changes that characterize human development. The role of climate in this process was far more subtle than the simple savanna hypothesis had suggested. Rather than driving linear environmental change that forced predictable evolutionary responses, climate operated as a complex variable that created constantly shifting patterns of opportunity and challenge. Periods of increased rainfall would expand forest cover and connect previously isolated populations. Drier periods would fragment habitats and promote genetic isolation. These cycles of expansion and contraction created a dynamic evolutionary environment that rewarded flexibility and innovation. Temperature fluctuations added another layer of complexity to this environmental mosaic. Research into ancient climate patterns reveals that Africa experienced significant temperature variations during the crucial period of early human evolution. These temperature changes didn't just affect overall climate patterns. They created localized environmental gradients that influenced how and where our ancestors lived. The discovery that forest canopies could be substantially warmer than forest floors has profound implications for understanding early human behavior. If our ancestors were intelligent enough to recognize and exploit these thermal differences, they could have developed complex, daily and seasonal movement patterns that maximized their comfort and efficiency. During the hottest parts of the day, they might have retreated to the cooler forest floor. During cooler periods, they could have returned to the canopy to access fruits, leaves, and other arboreal resources. This thermal landscape would have been particularly important for females with young offspring. Maintaining optimal body temperature would have been crucial for successful reproduction and infant survival. The ability to move between the cooler forest floor and the resource-rich canopy could have provided a significant reproductive advantage. Over time, this behavioral flexibility might have driven anatomical changes that made such movement more efficient and effective. The evidence for this complex relationship between environment and evolution comes from multiple sources. Fossil pollen samples reveal the types of vegetation that existed in different regions during different time periods. Isotopic analysis of ancient soils provides information about temperature and rainfall patterns. Geological studies reveal how landscapes changed over time due to tectonic activity and erosion. When all of this environmental data is combined with the anatomical evidence from fossil hominins, a remarkably detailed picture emerges of the world our ancestors inhabited. It was a world of incredible diversity and constant change, where success required flexibility, intelligence, and the ability to exploit multiple ecological niches simultaneously. The study of modern primates living in similar environments has provided crucial insights into how our ancestors might have responded to these complex environmental challenges. Observations of chimpanzees, bonobos, and other great apes in their natural habitats reveal sophisticated behavioral strategies for dealing with environmental variation. These modern apes adjust their daily activities, movement patterns, and social behaviors based on seasonal changes, resource availability, and environmental conditions. If our ancestors possessed similar behavioral flexibility, combined with their unique anatomical adaptations, they would have been remarkably well equipped to thrive in the complex environments of ancient Africa. The combination of bipedal locomotion for terrestrial travel retained arboreal adaptations for canopy access, and sophisticated behavioral strategies for environmental exploitation would have created an incredibly successful evolutionary package. This integrated approach to understanding early human evolution represents a fundamental shift in how scientists think about our origins. Instead of focusing on single factors like climate change or specific anatomical adaptations, researchers now recognize that human evolution was driven by the complex interaction of multiple environmental, anatomical, and behavioral factors operating simultaneously across diverse African landscapes. The implications of this new understanding extend far beyond academic paleontology. By recognizing the complexity and sophistication of our early ancestors, we gain a deeper appreciation for the remarkable evolutionary journey that led to modern humans. Our ancestors weren't simple creatures forced into linear evolutionary changes by environmental pressures. They were intelligent, adaptable beings who actively explored and exploited the opportunities presented by their complex and changing world. This recognition of early human sophistication also provides important context for understanding the rapid pace of later human evolution. The behavioral flexibility and environmental awareness that allowed our early ancestors to thrive in complex African landscapes laid the groundwork for the remarkable innovations that would follow. Tool use, fire control, language, and eventually art and symbolic behavior, all built upon the foundation of intelligence and adaptability that can be traced back to our earliest African ancestors. The story of when humans left the trees forever is ultimately not about leaving at all. It's about learning to live in multiple worlds simultaneously, exploiting both arboreal and terrestrial environments with remarkable skill and flexibility. Our ancestors didn't abandon their past when they developed new capabilities. They integrated old and new, creating evolutionary solutions that were more sophisticated and successful than anything that had come before. This integration of arboreal and terrestrial adaptations may have been the key innovation that set the human lineage apart from other primates. While other ape species specialized in particular environments or locomotor strategies, our ancestors chose versatility. They maintained their tree climbing abilities while developing terrestrial capabilities, creating a unique ecological niche that no other species could effectively exploit. The fossil evidence for this dual lifestyle becomes more compelling with each new discovery. Advanced imaging techniques continue to reveal anatomical details that support the idea of retained arboreality in early humans. Biomechanical analyses demonstrate how specific bone structures would have functioned in both arboreal and terrestrial contexts. Comparative studies with modern primates provide insights into the behavioral implications of these anatomical adaptations. Perhaps most importantly, this new understanding of early human evolution emphasizes the remarkable intelligence and adaptability of our ancestors. Rather than being passive victims of environmental change, they were active agents in their own evolutionary development. They made choices about how to use their environments, which resources to exploit, and how to adapt their behavior to changing conditions. These choices, accumulated over millions of years and countless generations, ultimately led to the extraordinary success of the human species. Success of the human species. The evidence for this sophisticated dual lifestyle extends far beyond Lucy and her contemporaries. When scientists began examining the complete spectrum of early human fossils with fresh analytical techniques, a pattern emerged that fundamentally challenged everything they thought they knew about human evolution. Each new discovery seemed to reinforce the same remarkable conclusion. Our ancestors weren't making a clean break from their arboreal past. They were creating something entirely new. Ardipithecus ramidus, the 4.4 million-year-old ancestor known as Ardi, provides perhaps the most compelling evidence for this revolutionary understanding. When researchers first uncovered Ardi's remains in the Ethiopian highlands, they found themselves looking at a creature that defied all existing categories. Ardi possessed anatomical features that had never been seen before in the fossil record, a unique combination of adaptations that suggested a completely novel approach to locomotion and lifestyle. The pelvis told one part of the story. Unlike modern chimpanzees, whose pelvic structure is optimized for quadrupedal knuckle walking, Ardi's pelvis showed clear modifications for upright walking. The iliac blades were shortened and broadened, providing better leverage for the muscles that stabilize the body during bipedal locomotion. The sacrum was positioned differently, allowing for more efficient weight transfer through the spine to the legs. These were unmistakable signs of an animal that spent significant time walking upright. But the hands and feet revealed something far more intriguing. Ardi's hands retained the long, curved fingers typical of tree-dwelling primates, perfectly adapted for gripping branches and supporting body weight during climbing. Her wrists showed none of the modifications seen in knuckle-walking apes, suggesting that when she moved on all fours, she used a palm-walking technique that was gentler on the joints and more suitable for occasional terrestrial travel. Most remarkable of all was Ardi's foot structure. She possessed a grasping big toe, a feature that had been lost in all later human ancestors. This opposable toe functioned like a thumb, allowing Ardi to grip branches securely while moving through the canopy. Yet the rest of her foot showed adaptations for weight-bearing during upright walking. It was as if evolution had created a foot that could function effectively both as a hand for tree climbing and as a platform for terrestrial locomotion. The combination of these features suggested that Ardi used a form of locomotion unlike anything seen in modern primates. When moving through trees, she likely used careful climbing techniques, gripping branches with both her hands and feet while maintaining an upright posture. This would have allowed her to access resources throughout the vertical structure of the forest canopy. When traveling on the ground, she could walk upright, though probably not with the efficiency of later human ancestors. The environment where Ardi lived provides crucial context for understanding these unique adaptations. Detailed analysis of the geological layers containing her fossils reveals a landscape dominated by dense woodlands. The soil chemistry indicates consistent moisture levels and rich organic content typical of forest environments. Fossil pollen samples show a diverse array of tree species, from large canopy trees to smaller understory plants. This wasn't a marginal forest struggling to survive in increasingly dry conditions. It was a thriving woodland ecosystem. The animal fossils found alongside Ardi reinforce this environmental interpretation. The species discovered in the same geological layers include forest-dwelling primates, woodland antelopes, and other creatures adapted to life in densely vegetated environments. Notably absent are the open country species that would be expected if the environment had been transitioning toward grassland savanna. This environmental evidence has forced scientists to reconsider fundamental assumptions about the relationship between habitat change and human evolution. If Ardi was developing bipedal adaptations while living in dense forests, then upright walking couldn't have evolved as a response to open grassland environments. Something else was driving this crucial evolutionary innovation. Recent research into the thermal properties of forest environments has provided a compelling alternative explanation. Detailed temperature measurements in modern African forests reveal significant vertical gradients in both temperature and humidity. The upper canopy, where much of the fruit and young leaves are located, can be substantially warmer than the forest floor, especially during the dry season when the protective cloud cover is reduced. For a large-bodied primate like Ardi, these temperature differences would have created significant challenges for thermoregulation. Spending long periods in the hot upper canopy while foraging could have led to dangerous overheating. However, the forest floor remained relatively cool and comfortable throughout the day. An intelligent animal might have learned to exploit this thermal landscape by timing its activities to take advantage of the most comfortable microclimates available. This thermal gradient hypothesis suggests that our ancestors might have developed a complex daily activity pattern that involved both arboreal foraging and terrestrial travel. During the cooler morning hours, they could have climbed into the canopy to feed on fruits and young leaves, As temperatures rose during the day, they might have retreated to the cooler forest floor for rest and social activities. In the evening, as temperatures dropped, they could have returned to the trees for additional foraging or to construct sleeping nests. Over time, this behavioral pattern would have created strong selective pressures favoring anatomical modifications that made movement between arboreal and terrestrial environments more efficient. Individuals who could climb effectively while maintaining the ability to walk upright on the ground would have had access to a broader range of resources and more flexible responses to environmental challenges. The evidence for this complex lifestyle extends beyond individual anatomical features to patterns visible across entire fossil assemblages. When scientists examine the bone chemistry of early human ancestors, they find isotopic signatures that indicate a diverse diet drawn from multiple ecological zones. These chemical fingerprints suggest that our ancestors were accessing resources from both the forest canopy and the ground level, exactly what would be expected if they were living the kind of flexible, multi-habitat lifestyle that the anatomical evidence suggests. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond the specific details of early human locomotion. If our ancestors were developing sophisticated behavioral strategies for exploiting complex environments millions of years ago, it suggests that high intelligence and behavioral flexibility have been characteristic of the human lineage from its very beginnings. We weren't simple apes who suddenly became smart. We were smart apes who became even smarter over time. This recognition of early human intelligence has profound implications for understanding the trajectory of human evolution. Many of the traits we consider uniquely human, including tool use, complex social behavior, and environmental manipulation, may have much deeper evolutionary roots than previously imagined. Our ancestors weren't passive recipients of evolutionary pressures. They were active agents who shaped their own evolutionary destiny through intelligent responses to environmental challenges and opportunities. The study of modern human populations provides additional support for this view of human evolution. In many parts of the world, people continue to combine terrestrial and arboreal activities in their daily lives. Hunter-gatherer populations in tropical forests routinely climb tall trees to access honey, fruits, and game animals. These climbing techniques require remarkable skill and anatomical adaptations that most modern humans retain despite our primarily terrestrial lifestyle. Detailed biomechanical studies of tree climbing in modern humans reveal that our anatomy remains remarkably well suited for arboreal locomotion. The shoulder joint retains the mobility necessary for reaching overhead while climbing. The hip joint maintains the flexibility needed for the wide range of leg positions required for efficient tree climbing. Even our feet, despite their obvious adaptations for terrestrial walking, retain enough flexibility and strength to function effectively as climbing aids. Perhaps most remarkably, studies of modern tree climbing populations reveal that humans can achieve extraordinary ankle flexibility during climbing, with dorsiflexion angles exceeding 45 degrees. This degree of flexibility is similar to that observed in wild chimpanzees and suggests that the basic anatomical machinery for effective tree climbing has been preserved throughout human evolution. These observations have led some researchers to propose that the supposed incompatibility between bipedalism and arboreality has been greatly exaggerated. Rather than representing mutually exclusive locomotor strategies, these two forms of movement may be more complementary than previously recognized. The retention of climbing ability alongside the development of terrestrial bipedalism may have been one of the key innovations that allowed early humans to exploit ecological niches that were unavailable to other primates. This perspective has been reinforced by studies of great apes living in environments similar to those inhabited by early human ancestors. Chimpanzees in the Issa Valley of Tanzania, living in the kind of savanna mosaic environment that characterized much of ancient Africa, spend most of their time in trees, despite the relatively open nature of their habitat. When they do engage in bipedal locomotion, it occurs predominantly in arboreal contexts, supporting the hypothesis that upright walking may have evolved as an arboreal rather than terrestrial adaptation. The behavioral ecology of these modern apes provides important insights into the selective pressures that may have shaped early human evolution. In environments where resources are distributed both vertically through forest layers and horizontally across the landscape, the ability to move efficiently between different habitats becomes a crucial survival skill. Animals that can access both arboreal and terrestrial resources have significant advantages over specialists who are restricted to a single habitat type. This ecological flexibility would have been particularly important during periods of environmental instability. As African climates fluctuated over millions of years, creating cycles of expansion and contraction in different habitat types, our ancestors' ability to exploit multiple environments simultaneously would have provided crucial insurance against local resource failures. When drought reduced fruit production in the forest canopy, terrestrial resources could have provided alternative nutrition. When grassland productivity declined, arboreal resources could have filled the gap. The fossil record provides evidence for exactly this kind of dietary flexibility in early human ancestors. Chemical analysis of ancient teeth reveals isotopic signatures indicating that these early humans consumed a remarkably diverse array of foods. Plant materials from both forest and grassland environments, along with evidence of animal protein consumption, suggest that our ancestors were true ecological generalists who exploited whatever resources were available in their complex environments. This dietary diversity would have required not just anatomical adaptations for accessing different food sources, but also sophisticated cognitive abilities for remembering the locations and seasonal availability of various resources. The mental maps needed to navigate complex environments and efficiently exploit scattered resources would have demanded considerable intelligence and memory capacity. The development of these cognitive abilities may have been one of the most important consequences of the dual arboreal-terrestrial lifestyle adopted by early human ancestors. Living successfully in multiple environments requires constant decision-making about where to go, what to eat, and how to respond to changing conditions. These cognitive demands may have provided the selective pressure that drove the expansion of brain size and intelligence that characterizes human evolution. The social implications of this lifestyle were equally profound. If early human ancestors were spending time in both trees and on the ground, their social interactions would have been far more complex than those of primates restricted to a single habitat type. Group coordination would have required sophisticated communication systems for maintaining contact between individuals scattered across multiple habitat layers. Decision-making about group movements would have involved weighing the costs and benefits of different environments and activities. These social challenges may have contributed to the evolution of the complex communication systems that would eventually lead to human language. The need to coordinate activities across multiple environments and share information about resource locations and environmental conditions would have created strong selective pressures favoring enhanced communication abilities. The archaeological record from later periods in human evolution provides evidence for the continued importance of both arboreal and terrestrial resources in human survival strategies. Stone tool assemblages from sites across Africa include implements clearly designed for processing both plant and animal materials. The diversity of these tool types suggests that early humans were exploiting an incredibly wide range of resources from multiple environments. Some of the most intriguing archaeological evidence comes from sites that show clear evidence of human activity in both forested and open environments. These sites suggest that even after the development of sophisticated stone tool technologies, humans continued to maintain flexible habitat use strategies that took advantage of whatever resources were locally available. The persistence of this ecological flexibility throughout human evolution may explain many of the unique characteristics that distinguish humans from other primates. Our remarkable dietary adaptability, our complex social systems, our sophisticated communication abilities, and our extraordinary intelligence may all trace their origins back to the fundamental decision made by our earliest ancestors to exploit both our boreal and terrestrial environments simultaneously. This evolutionary strategy required our ancestors to become masters of adaptation, constantly adjusting their behavior, anatomy, and social systems to take advantage of changing opportunities and challenges. The flexibility and intelligence developed through millions of years of multi-habitat living provided the foundation for all of the remarkable innovations that would follow in later human evolution. The story of early human evolution is ultimately not about leaving the trees or committing to terrestrial life. It's about the revolutionary decision to refuse to specialize, to maintain options, and to exploit the full complexity of the African landscape. Our ancestors didn't choose between trees and ground. They chose both. And in doing so, they set in motion the extraordinary evolutionary journey that would ultimately lead to modern humans. This understanding of our origins provides a fundamentally different perspective on what it means to be human. We are not the descendants of apes who abandoned their past to pursue a terrestrial future. We are the inheritors of a lineage that learned to live in multiple worlds simultaneously, maintaining connections to both ancient arboreal heritage and innovative terrestrial possibilities. The anatomical and behavioral flexibility that allowed our ancestors to thrive in complex African environments remains part of our biological inheritance today. The same adaptability that enabled early humans to exploit both forest and grassland resources continues to manifest in our species' remarkable ability to survive and thrive in virtually every environment on Earth, from the tropical rainforests, where some human populations still climb tall trees to access resources, to the Arctic tundra, where others have learned to exploit marine and terrestrial ecosystems. Humans continue to demonstrate the ecological flexibility that first appeared millions of years ago in our earliest African ancestors. We remain, in a very real sense, creatures of multiple worlds, carrying within our anatomy and behavior the legacy of ancestors who refused to be constrained by the limitations of single habitats or specialized lifestyles. The revolution in understanding early human evolution accelerated dramatically when scientists began applying cutting-edge biomechanical analysis to ancient fossils. Using high-resolution CT scanners and sophisticated computer modeling, researchers could peer inside fossilized bones with unprecedented detail, revealing secrets that had been locked away for millions of years. What they discovered fundamentally changed how we interpret the behavior of our earliest ancestors. The internal structure of bones tells a story that external anatomy alone cannot reveal. When living creatures use their bodies in specific ways, the internal architecture of their bones responds by becoming stronger in areas of high stress and lighter in areas of low demand. This principle, known as Wolff's Law, means that fossilized bones carry permanent records of how ancient animals actually moved and lived. When scientists applied this analytical approach to Lucy's arm bones, the results were startling. The internal structure revealed patterns of bone density and trabecular architecture that matched modern chimpanzees far more closely than modern humans. Lucy's upper arm bones showed the kind of robust internal scaffolding that develops in response to the intense forces generated during tree climbing and arm-over-arm locomotion through the canopy. But the story told by Lucy's bones was even more complex than simple tree climbing. The distribution of dense bone tissue suggested that she was using her arms for powerful pulling motions, the kind needed to haul her body weight up vertical tree trunks or to swing between branches. At the same time, her leg bones showed clear adaptations for bipedal walking, with internal structures optimized for the forces generated when standing and walking upright on two legs. This biomechanical evidence painted a picture of an animal living a truly dual lifestyle. Lucy wasn't occasionally climbing trees as a leftover behavior from her arboreal ancestors. She was actively and regularly engaging in both arboreal and terrestrial locomotion as fundamental components of her daily survival strategy. The strength patterns in her bones indicated that both forms of movement were essential parts of her lifestyle, not optional behaviors used only in emergencies. The implications of these findings extended far beyond Lucy herself. When researchers applied the same analytical techniques to other early human fossils, similar patterns emerged across multiple species and time periods. Australopithecus afarensis, Australopithecus africanus, and even some early members of the genus Homo showed evidence of retained arboreal capabilities alongside their terrestrial adaptations. This consistent pattern across different species and geographic regions suggested that the dual arboreal-terrestrial lifestyle wasn't an aberration or a transitional phase. It was a successful evolutionary strategy that persisted for millions of years, providing our ancestors with crucial advantages in the complex environments of ancient Africa. The success of this dual lifestyle becomes even more apparent when we consider the challenges that early humans faced in their ancient African environments. Predation pressure was intense, with large carnivores including saber-toothed cats, hyenas, and early relatives of modern lions posing constant threats. For relatively small-bodied early humans, trees provided crucial refuge from these ground-dwelling predators. But predator avoidance was just one aspect of the survival equation. Resource distribution in ancient African environments was highly variable both spatially and temporally. Seasonal changes in rainfall and temperature created boom and bust cycles in food availability. During abundant periods, certain resources might be plentiful, but during lean times, our ancestors needed access to alternative food sources to survive. The vertical structure of forest environments meant that different resources were available at different heights above the ground. Fruits and young leaves were concentrated in the upper canopy, mature leaves and bark were available at intermediate heights, and roots, tubers, and fallen fruits could be found at ground level. An animal capable of exploiting all of these vertical zones would have had access to a much more diverse and reliable food supply than one restricted to a single habitat layer. Archaeological evidence from early human sites supports this interpretation of diverse resource use. Stone tools found at these ancient sites show wear patterns indicating they were used to process a wide variety of plant materials. Cut marks on animal bones suggest that early humans were also exploiting terrestrial protein sources. The combination of tools designed for plant processing and evidence of meat consumption indicates that our ancestors were true omnivores, exploiting whatever resources were available in their complex environments. The cognitive demands of this lifestyle would have been extraordinary. Successfully exploiting multiple habitat layers requires detailed knowledge of seasonal patterns, resource locations, and the behavior of both predators and prey. Early humans would have needed sophisticated mental maps of their territories, tracking not just where different resources could be found, but when they would be available and accessible. This cognitive complexity may have been one of the key drivers of brain evolution in early humans. The challenges of coordinating group activities across multiple habitat layers, remembering seasonal patterns of resource availability, and making complex decisions about risk and reward would have created intense selective pressure for enhanced intelligence and problem-solving abilities. Social coordination would have been particularly challenging for groups that spent time in both trees and on the ground. Maintaining group cohesion while individuals were scattered across different vertical zones would have required sophisticated communication systems. The need to share information about resource discoveries, predator sightings, and environmental changes would have favored the evolution of complex signaling behaviors that may have been precursors to human language. The evidence for this complex social behavior comes from multiple sources. The size and structure of early human fossil sites suggest that these ancestors lived in social groups of considerable size and complexity. The distribution of artifacts and fossils indicates that different activities were taking place in different areas of these sites, suggesting some degree of task specialization and social organization. Most intriguingly, some early human sites show evidence of what appears to be deliberate modification of the local environment. Trees may have been selectively harvested or encouraged, water sources may have been modified or maintained, and pathways between different resource areas may have been cleared and maintained. This kind of environmental management requires not just individual intelligence, but coordinated group planning and execution. The development of these environmental management capabilities may have been a crucial step in human evolution, representing the beginning of our species' unique ability to actively modify environments rather than simply adapting to them. The skills developed through millions of years of managing complex arboreal terrestrial territories may have provided the foundation for the agricultural innovations that would eventually transform human civilization. Modern studies of hunter-gatherer populations provide insights into how these ancient environmental management strategies might have worked. Many contemporary foraging societies actively manage forest resources, selectively harvesting certain species while protecting and encouraging others. These practices can significantly increase the productivity and reliability of forest environments, providing more resources than would be available through simple gathering alone. If early human ancestors were engaging in similar environmental management practices, it would help explain how they were able to support larger group sizes and more complex social organizations than would be expected based on simple foraging models. Active environmental management would have allowed them to increase the carrying capacity of their territories, supporting population growth and social complexity. The archaeological record provides some tantalizing hints that this kind of environmental management may have been practiced by early humans. Some sites show unusual concentrations of certain plant species that may indicate deliberate cultivation or protection. Fire patterns at some locations suggest that early humans may have been using controlled burning to manage vegetation and encourage the growth of preferred food plants. The use of fire as a landscape management tool would have been particularly important in the complex mosaic environments where early humans lived. Controlled burning could have been used to maintain open areas for terrestrial foraging while preserving forest patches for arboreal resources. This kind of fine-grained habitat management would have required sophisticated understanding of ecological processes and careful coordination among group members. The mastery of fire represents one of the most significant technological advances in human evolution, with implications that extended far beyond simple cooking and warmth. Fire provided protection from predators, extended the useful hours of the day, and enabled the processing of previously inedible plant materials. But perhaps most importantly, fire gave early humans the ability to actively shape their environments on a landscape scale. Evidence for the controlled use of fire by early humans extends back much further than previously thought. Recent discoveries have revealed fire-associated artifacts and modified sediments at sites dating back over 1 million years, suggesting that our ancestors mastered this crucial technology much earlier than traditional theories had proposed. The implications of early fire use for understanding human evolution are profound and far-reaching. Fire would have been particularly valuable for groups living in complex arboreal terrestrial environments. During the night, when most large predators are active and tree climbing becomes more dangerous, fire would have provided crucial protection for ground-level activities. Early humans could have used controlled fires to create safe zones for sleeping, food processing, and social activities, while still maintaining access to arboreal resources during daylight hours. The cooking of plant materials would have been especially important for maximizing the nutritional value of the diverse plant foods available in forest environments. Many plant materials that are difficult or impossible to digest when raw become highly nutritious when cooked. The ability to process these previously unusable resources would have significantly expanded the range of foods available to early human groups. Cooking also would have had important implications for social behavior and group organization. The preparation and sharing of cooked foods requires coordination and cooperation among group members. The time and effort invested in fire maintenance and food preparation would have encouraged the development of more stable group structures and more complex social relationships. The evidence for these advanced social behaviors comes from the spatial organization of early human sites. Archaeological excavations reveal areas that appear to have been designated for specific activities, including food preparation, tool manufacture, and social gathering. This kind of spatial organization indicates a level of social complexity and forward planning that goes far beyond the simple opportunistic behavior that characterized earlier interpretations of early human life. Perhaps most remarkably, some early human sites show evidence of what appears to be symbolic behavior. Unusual arrangements of stones, modifications to natural rock formations, and the deliberate transport of non-utilitarian objects over long distances all suggest that our ancestors were engaging in activities that went beyond simple survival needs. These behaviors indicate the development of cognitive abilities that would eventually lead to art, religion, and the complex symbolic systems that characterize modern human culture. The timeline for the development of these symbolic behaviors has been pushed steadily earlier as new discoveries have revealed increasingly sophisticated evidence of early human cognitive abilities. What was once thought to be a late development in human evolution now appears to have much deeper roots, extending back into the period when our ancestors were still living their dual arboreal terrestrial lifestyle. This connection between early environmental complexity and later cognitive sophistication suggests that the challenges of living successfully in multiple habitats simultaneously may have been crucial in driving the evolution of human intelligence. The mental flexibility required to switch between different locomotor strategies, exploit diverse resource bases, and coordinate complex group activities in varied environments may have provided the cognitive foundation for all later human innovations. The preservation of arboreal capabilities alongside the development of terrestrial adaptations represents a fundamental choice that shaped the entire trajectory of human evolution. Rather than specializing in a single environmental niche, our ancestors chose versatility and flexibility. This choice required them to maintain complex anatomical and behavioral repertoires that were more demanding than simple specialization would have been. But the benefits of this evolutionary strategy were enormous. By refusing to commit fully to either arboreal or terrestrial life, early humans maintained access to the full range of resources available in their complex African environments. This ecological flexibility provided crucial insurance against environmental changes and resource fluctuations that might have eliminated more specialized species. The success of this strategy is evident in the remarkable persistence and spread of early human populations across Africa. While other primate lineages remained restricted to specific habitat types, early humans were able to colonize a wide range of environments across the continent. Their ability to exploit both forest and grassland resources allowed them to survive and thrive in regions where more specialized species could not establish viable populations. This ecological success provided the foundation for the later expansion of human populations beyond Africa and into the diverse environments of the rest of the world. The behavioral and anatomical flexibility that allowed early humans to thrive in the complex landscapes of ancient Africa would prove equally valuable when later human populations encountered the novel environments of Europe, Asia, and eventually the Americas. The legacy of this early ecological flexibility remains visible in modern humans today. Our remarkable dietary adaptability, our ability to survive and thrive in virtually any terrestrial environment, and our capacity for rapid behavioral and technological innovation all trace their origins back to the fundamental evolutionary strategy adopted by our earliest African ancestors. We carry within our anatomy and behavior the permanent record of ancestors who refused to choose between trees and ground, between forest and grassland, between specialization and generalization. The dual lifestyle that allowed early humans to exploit complex African environments millions of years ago continues to influence human behavior and capabilities today, reminding us that our success as a species has always been rooted in flexibility, adaptation, and the willingness to embrace complexity rather than retreat into simplification. The story of early human evolution is ultimately a story about the power of keeping options open, maintaining connections to multiple worlds, and refusing to be limited by conventional boundaries. Our ancestors didn't succeed by choosing the obvious path or following the strategies that had worked for other species. They succeeded by creating something entirely new, a way of life that combined the best aspects of multiple approaches while avoiding the limitations of any single specialization. This evolutionary creativity and flexibility remain defining characteristics of our species today. From the forests where some humans still climb tall trees to access resources, to the cities where others have created entirely artificial environments, we continue to demonstrate the same adaptability and innovation that first appeared in our earliest African ancestors. We are still, in every meaningful sense, creatures who refuse to be contained by single environments or limited by conventional expectations, carrying forward the legacy of ancestors who learned to live in multiple worlds simultaneously. The profound implications of this understanding extend beyond simple evolutionary history into our comprehension of what makes humans unique among Earth's species. We are not successful because we are the strongest, fastest, or most specialized creatures on the planet. We are successful because we learned millions of years ago to be the most flexible and adaptable. The dual arboreal terrestrial lifestyle of our earliest ancestors established patterns of behavioral and cognitive flexibility that continue to drive human innovation and success today. In recognizing this legacy, we gain not just knowledge about our past, but insight into our continuing potential as a species. The same qualities that allowed our ancestors to thrive in the complex environments of ancient Africa, the intelligence, adaptability, and willingness to embrace complexity rather than retreat from it, remain our greatest assets as we face the challenges and opportunities of an increasingly complex modern world. The revelation that our ancestors maintained sophisticated dual lifestyles for millions of years has completely transformed how scientists understand the pace and pattern of human evolution. Rather than a rapid transition from tree-dwelling to ground living, the fossil record now reveals an extraordinarily long period of what researchers call locomotor experimentation. Our ancestors weren't rushing towards some predetermined terrestrial destiny. They were taking their time, testing different approaches, and gradually refining a lifestyle that gave them unprecedented access to the resources of ancient Africa. This extended period of evolutionary experimentation helps explain many of the puzzling features found in early human fossils. Anatomical characteristics that seemed contradictory or transitional when viewed through the lens of linear progression make perfect sense when understood as adaptations for a complex dual lifestyle. Features that preserved arboreal capabilities while enabling terrestrial locomotion weren't evolutionary compromises. They were sophisticated solutions to the challenges of exploiting multiple environments simultaneously. The geographic distribution of early human fossils provides additional evidence for this complex evolutionary strategy. Rather than being concentrated in a single region or environment type, early human remains have been discovered across a wide range of African landscapes. From the lake-rich environments of eastern Africa to the diverse woodlands of southern regions, our ancestors were successfully establishing populations in virtually every available ecological niche. This geographic diversity reflects the success of the dual lifestyle strategy. By maintaining both arboreal and terrestrial capabilities, early human populations could colonize environments that would have been unsuitable for more specialized species. Forest regions provided abundant arboreal resources, but required climbing abilities to access them effectively. More open areas offered terrestrial opportunities, but demanded efficient bipedal locomotion for successful exploitation. The temporal persistence of this dual lifestyle is equally remarkable. Evidence for retained arboreal capabilities can be found in human fossils spanning several million years of evolutionary history. This isn't a brief transitional phase that lasted a few 100,000 years. It's a stable evolutionary strategy that persisted across multiple species and environmental changes, suggesting that it provided substantial and lasting advantages. Recent advances in isotopic analysis have provided unprecedented insights into the dietary strategies of these ancient dual lifestyle populations. Chemical signatures preserved in fossilized teeth reveal consumption patterns that confirm the exploitation of both arboreal and terrestrial food sources. Carbon isotope ratios indicate that early humans were accessing plant materials from forest canopies, woodland understories, and open grassland areas within the same time periods. These dietary patterns show remarkable seasonal variation, suggesting that early human groups were sophisticated enough to time their activities to take advantage of different resources as they became available throughout the year. During periods when fruits were abundant in the forest canopy, isotopic signatures show increased consumption of these high-energy foods. When terrestrial resources like roots and tubers were more accessible, the chemical evidence shows a corresponding shift toward these alternative food sources. This seasonal dietary flexibility would have required extraordinary ecological knowledge and planning capabilities. Successfully exploiting resources that became available at different times and in different locations demanded detailed understanding of environmental cycles, resource phenology, and the complex interactions between climate, vegetation, and animal behavior. The cognitive demands of managing this information would have provided intense selective pressure for enhanced memory, planning, and decision-making abilities. The social implications of coordinating group activities around seasonal resource cycles would have been equally complex. Group movements would need to be planned weeks or months in advance to ensure that populations arrived at resource locations at optimal times. Information about resource availability would need to be shared among group members and potentially between different groups, exploiting the same general areas. Archaeological evidence from early human sites supports this interpretation of sophisticated seasonal planning and resource management. Tool assemblages show clear seasonal patterns, with different types of implements appearing at different times of the year. During periods associated with arboreal foraging, sites contain more tools designed for processing fruits and extracting materials from trees. When terrestrial resources were being exploited, the archaeological record shows increased frequencies of digging implements and tools for processing underground plant parts. The preservation of organic materials at some exceptional sites has provided direct evidence of the plant foods that early humans were consuming. Microscopic plant remains recovered from ancient hearths and food processing areas reveal an astonishing diversity of species being exploited. Forest fruits, woodland nuts, grassland seeds, and underground storage organs all appear in the archaeological record, confirming that early humans were indeed accessing resources from across the full spectrum of available environments. Perhaps most remarkably, some of these sites show evidence that early humans were not just collecting wild resources, but were beginning to actively manage and modify plant communities. Unusual concentrations of certain useful species, along with evidence of selective harvesting and possible replanting, suggest that our ancestors were developing the first rudimentary forms of agricultural practice millions of years earlier than traditional theories had proposed. This early environmental management would have been particularly important in the context of the dual arboreal-terrestrial lifestyle. By selectively encouraging useful plant species and discouraging competitors or threats, early human groups could have significantly increased the productivity and predictability of their territories. Managed forest patches could have provided more reliable access to preferred fruits and nuts, while modified grassland areas could have increased the availability of important terrestrial resources. The techniques used for this early environmental management would have been relatively simple but highly effective. Selective harvesting could have encouraged the growth and reproduction of preferred species while reducing competition from less useful plants. Fire could have been used to maintain optimal mixtures of forest and grassland vegetation within territories. Simple cultivation techniques could have increased the density and accessibility of important food plants. Evidence for the controlled use of fire by early humans has been discovered at sites dating back much further than previously thought possible. Microscopic analysis of ancient sediments reveals layers of ash and charcoal that show clear patterns of human control rather than natural wildfire occurrence. These fire signatures appear in association with early human artifacts and show the kind of spatial patterning that would be expected if fire were being used as a landscape management tool. The mastery of fire technology would have been transformative for groups living the dual arboreal terrestrial lifestyle. Fire provided protection during vulnerable ground-level activities, extended the useful hours for terrestrial foraging, and enabled the processing of plant materials that would otherwise have been inedible or difficult to digest. Most importantly, fire gave early humans the ability to actively reshape their environments to better meet their needs. Controlled burning could have been used to create and maintain the kind of mosaic landscapes that were optimal for dual lifestyle populations. Small-scale fires could have opened up forest understories to encourage the growth of preferred food plants, while preserving canopy trees for arboreal resources. Larger burns could have created grassland openings within forested areas, providing access to terrestrial resources without requiring long-distance travel to naturally open environments. The social organization required for effective fire management would have been considerable. Coordinated burning requires careful timing, cooperation among multiple individuals, and sophisticated understanding of weather patterns and vegetation dynamics. The development of these capabilities would have necessitated enhanced communication systems and more complex social structures than had previously characterized early human groups. Archaeological evidence suggests that early human social organization was indeed becoming more sophisticated during this period. Site layouts show increasing evidence of activity-specific areas and what appears to be deliberate spatial organization of different functions. Areas designated for food processing, tool manufacture, and social gathering indicate a level of planning and coordination that goes well beyond simple, opportunistic behavior. The size and complexity of some early human sites also suggests that group sizes were increasing during this period. Larger groups would have been advantageous for managing the complex activities required for dual lifestyle success, but they also would have created new challenges for resource management and social coordination. The archaeological evidence indicates that early human groups were successfully meeting these challenges and developing increasingly sophisticated social systems. One of the most intriguing aspects of this social development is the evidence for what appears to be intergroup cooperation and information sharing. Similarities in tool technologies and site organization patterns across wide geographic areas suggest that early human groups were maintaining contact and exchanging information even when separated by considerable distances. This kind of long-distance social networking would have been particularly valuable for populations exploiting seasonal resources that might vary in availability across different regions. The maintenance of these extended social networks would have required sophisticated communication capabilities, and possibly even the earliest forms of symbolic representation. The ability to share complex information about resource locations, seasonal timing, and environmental conditions across large geographic areas would have demanded communication systems more advanced than simple gestural or vocal signals. Some early human sites contain objects that may represent the earliest evidence of symbolic behavior in human evolution. Unusual stone arrangements, modified natural objects, and artifacts that appear to have been transported over long distances for non-utilitarian purposes all suggest that our ancestors were beginning to engage in activities that went beyond immediate survival needs. These behaviors indicate the development of cognitive capabilities that would eventually lead to art, ritual, and the complex symbolic systems that characterize modern human culture. The timeline for the development of symbolic behavior has been steadily pushed back, as new discoveries have revealed increasingly sophisticated evidence of early human cognitive abilities. What was once thought to be a recent development in human evolution now appears to have much deeper roots, extending back into the period when our ancestors were still living their complex dual lifestyle. This connection between early environmental complexity and later symbolic sophistication provides important insights into the evolutionary pressures that shaped human cognitive development. The challenges of successfully coordinating complex activities across multiple environments, managing seasonal resource cycles, and maintaining extended social networks would have created intense selective pressure for enhanced communication, memory, and abstract thinking abilities. The cognitive demands of the dual arboreal terrestrial lifestyle may have been one of the key drivers of the rapid brain expansion that characterizes human evolution. The mental challenges of switching between different locomotor strategies, tracking complex environmental patterns, and coordinating sophisticated group activities would have required cognitive abilities far beyond those needed for simpler, more specialized lifestyles. Modern studies of brain function provide insights into the neural mechanisms that would have been required for successful dual lifestyle living. The ability to rapidly switch between different motor programs for arboreal and terrestrial locomotion requires sophisticated neural coordination and motor planning capabilities. The spatial memory systems needed to navigate complex three-dimensional forest environments while also maintaining detailed knowledge of terrestrial resource locations would have demanded considerable neural processing power. The social cognitive abilities required for coordinating group activities across multiple environments would have been particularly demanding. Understanding the intentions and capabilities of other group members, planning coordinated activities, and maintaining social relationships within complex group structures all require sophisticated neural mechanisms that are highly developed in modern humans, but less prominent in other primate species. Recent research into the neural basis of human locomotor abilities has revealed that our brains retain remarkable capabilities for controlling both bipedal walking and climbing movements. Neuroimaging studies show that humans possess neural circuits specifically adapted for controlling the complex muscle coordination patterns required for effective tree climbing, even though most modern humans rarely engage in this activity. These retained neural capabilities provide direct evidence that climbing remained an important part of human behavior long enough to leave permanent traces in our brain organization. The fact that these neural circuits are still present and functional in modern humans suggests that arboreal locomotion was practiced by our ancestors until relatively recently in evolutionary terms. The persistence of climbing-related neural circuitry also helps explain why modern humans can still climb trees effectively, despite our primarily terrestrial lifestyle. Studies of tree climbing populations around the world show that humans can achieve remarkable proficiency in arboreal locomotion with relatively little practice, suggesting that the basic neural machinery for this behavior has been preserved throughout our evolutionary history. The implications of this research extend beyond simple locomotor abilities to broader questions about human cognitive evolution. If our brains retain specific adaptations for controlling complex arboreal movements, it suggests that the dual lifestyle period lasted long enough and was important enough to leave permanent marks on our neural organization. This provides additional support for the idea that the transition to fully terrestrial living was much more gradual and recent than traditional theories had proposed. The study of modern hunter-gatherer populations provides additional insights into the persistence and importance of arboreal capabilities in human evolution. Many contemporary foraging societies continue to rely heavily on tree climbing for accessing honey, fruits, and other resources that would otherwise be unavailable. These populations demonstrate that the combination of bipedal walking and climbing abilities remains highly adaptive even in modern environments. Detailed studies of climbing techniques used by modern hunter-gatherers reveal remarkable similarities to the movement patterns that would have been required by our early ancestors. The ankle flexibility, upper body strength, and coordination abilities demonstrated by these populations provide a living model of how early humans might have moved through their complex ancient environments. The fact that these climbing abilities can be maintained alongside fully developed bipedal locomotion demonstrates that there is no fundamental incompatibility between these two forms of movement. Rather than representing competing adaptations, arboreal and terrestrial locomotion appear to be complementary capabilities that can be successfully combined within a single species. This complementarity helps explain why the dual lifestyle strategy was so successful for early human populations. Rather than forcing a choice between arboreal and terrestrial specialization, our ancestors discovered a way to maintain both capabilities simultaneously, giving them unprecedented flexibility in exploiting diverse African environments. The success of this evolutionary strategy is evident in the remarkable spread and persistence of early human populations across Africa. While other primate species remained restricted to specific habitat types, early humans were able to establish viable populations in virtually every available ecological niche. Their ability to exploit both vertical forest resources and horizontal terrestrial opportunities allowed them to thrive in environments where more specialized species could not survive. The ecological flexibility provided by the dual lifestyle strategy also gave early human populations crucial resilience in the face of environmental changes. As African climates fluctuated over millions of years, creating cycles of expansion and contraction in different habitat types, populations that could exploit multiple resource bases had significant advantages over those dependent on single environment types. This environmental resilience may have been one of the key factors that allowed early human lineages to survive and eventually expand beyond Africa. The behavioral and anatomical flexibility that enabled success in the complex mosaic environments of ancient Africa would have been equally valuable when later human populations encountered the novel environments of other continents. The legacy of the dual arboreal terrestrial lifestyle remains visible in virtually every aspect of modern human biology and behavior. Our remarkable dietary flexibility, our ability to thrive in diverse environments, our complex social systems, and our extraordinary cognitive capabilities all trace their origins back to the fundamental evolutionary strategy adopted by our earliest ancestors. Perhaps most importantly, the dual lifestyle strategy established patterns of behavioral flexibility and environmental adaptation that continue to characterize human responses to new challenges and opportunities. The same willingness to experiment with novel solutions and maintain multiple options that allowed our ancestors to succeed in ancient Africa continues to drive human innovation and adaptation in the modern world. The understanding that our ancestors spent millions of years perfecting a complex dual lifestyle rather than making a simple transition from trees to ground has profound implications for how we think about human nature and human potential. We are not the descendants of creatures who abandoned their past to pursue a predetermined future. We are the inheritors of a lineage that learned to embrace complexity, maintain flexibility, and create innovative solutions to environmental challenges. This perspective on human evolution emphasizes the remarkable creativity and adaptability that have always been central to human success. Our ancestors weren't passive victims of environmental change who were forced into new lifestyles by external pressures. They were active agents who recognized opportunities, experimented with new possibilities, and gradually developed solutions that were more sophisticated and successful than anything that had come before. The fossil record reveals that this process of experimentation and innovation continued for millions of years, with different populations trying different approaches and gradually refining the techniques that work best in their local environments. The dual lifestyle wasn't a brief transitional phase, but a stable and successful evolutionary strategy that provided the foundation for all subsequent human development. In recognizing the sophistication and success of this ancient dual lifestyle, we gain important insights into the qualities that have always defined human success. Intelligence, adaptability, cooperation, and the willingness to embrace complexity rather than retreat into simplification have been the keys to human survival and prosperity for millions of years. These same qualities remain our greatest assets as we face the challenges and opportunities of an increasingly complex modern world. The flexibility and innovation that allowed our ancestors to thrive in the diverse environments of ancient Africa continue to enable human success in environments and situations that would have been unimaginable to earlier generations. The story of the dual arboreal terrestrial lifestyle is ultimately a story about the power of refusing to accept limitations and the benefits of maintaining connections to multiple worlds. Our ancestors succeeded not by specializing or simplifying, but by embracing the full complexity of their environments and developing innovative ways to exploit every available opportunity. This legacy of flexibility and innovation remains one of the defining characteristics of our species. From the rainforests, where some humans still climb towering trees to access resources, to the urban environments where others have created entirely new forms of social and economic organization, we continue to demonstrate the same adaptability and creativity that first appeared millions of years ago in our earliest African ancestors. The recognition that humans never truly left the trees forever, but instead learned to live successfully in multiple worlds simultaneously, provides a fundamentally different perspective on human evolution and human potential. We are creatures of complexity and adaptation, carrying within our biology and behavior the accumulated wisdom of millions of years of successful environmental experimentation. This understanding offers both humility and inspiration. Humility in recognizing that our current success builds upon millions of years of ancestral innovation and adaptation. Inspiration in realizing that the same qualities that allowed our ancestors to thrive in ancient Africa continue to enable human success and innovation today. The dual lifestyle of our earliest ancestors established patterns of behavior and thought that continue to influence human development. The willingness to experiment, the ability to maintain multiple options, and the capacity to create innovative solutions to complex challenges remain the foundation of human success in every domain of modern life. As we continue to face new environmental challenges and opportunities in the modern world, the example of our ancestors provides valuable guidance. Their success came not from choosing the obvious path or following conventional strategies, but from maintaining flexibility, embracing complexity, and continuously innovating new approaches to environmental challenges. The story of when humans supposedly left the trees forever is really the story of when humans learned to live everywhere simultaneously. Our ancestors didn't abandon their arboreal heritage when they developed terrestrial capabilities. They integrated old and new, creating a way of life that was more sophisticated and successful than either pure arboreality or pure terrestriality could have provided. This integration of multiple capabilities and environments established the template for all subsequent human development. From tool use and fire control to language and symbolic thought, every major innovation in human evolution built upon the foundation of flexibility and adaptability that was first established during the dual lifestyle period. The anatomical and behavioral legacy of this ancient lifestyle continues to influence human capabilities and potential today. We remain creatures capable of remarkable physical and cognitive flexibility, able to adapt our behavior and strategies to meet the demands of virtually any environment or challenge. In understanding the true complexity and sophistication of our evolutionary origins, we gain important insights into both our past and our future. The same qualities that allowed our ancestors to succeed in ancient Africa continue to drive human innovation and adaptation in the modern world, reminding us that our greatest strength has always been our refusal to be limited by conventional boundaries or simple categories. Categories. The remarkable preservation of arboreal capabilities throughout human evolution becomes even more intriguing when we examine the specific environments where different early human species thrived. Recent paleo-environmental reconstructions have revealed that many of our ancestors lived in what scientists now call thermal gradient environments, where temperature differences between forest canopies and ground levels created complex daily survival strategies that shaped the very foundations of human behavior. Modern studies in African forests have uncovered a phenomenon that early human researchers had never fully appreciated. During the hottest parts of the day, forest canopies can reach temperatures that are 5 to 7 degrees Celsius higher than the forest floor. This might not sound like much, but for a large-bodied primate trying to forage for food while avoiding deadly overheating, These temperature differences represented the difference between life and death. Imagine our ancestors during the peak heat of an ancient African day. The upper canopy, where the sweetest fruits and youngest leaves were located, became a furnace that could quickly overwhelm even the most heat-adapted creature. But just meters below, the forest floor remained relatively cool and comfortable, shaded by the very canopy that had become uninhabitable above. This thermal landscape created what researchers now recognize as one of the most sophisticated behavioral strategies in primate evolution. Our ancestors weren't just randomly switching between trees and ground based on food availability or predator pressure. They were actively managing their daily activities around temperature gradients, developing complex time-budgeting strategies that maximize their access to resources while minimizing their risk of fatal overheating. The behavioral implications of this thermal management strategy were extraordinary. Early humans would have needed to develop detailed mental maps, not just of where different resources were located, but of when those resources could be safely accessed throughout the day. Morning hours might have been optimal for canopy foraging, when temperatures were moderate and fruits were at their peak freshness. Midday heat would have driven them to the cooler forest floor for rest, social activities, and terrestrial foraging. Evening hours could have provided another window for arboreal activity as temperatures dropped and different resources became available. This temporal complexity would have demanded cognitive abilities far beyond those required for simple environmental exploitation. Our ancestors weren't just finding food and eating it. They were managing sophisticated daily schedules that required advanced planning, environmental monitoring, and flexible decision-making based on constantly changing conditions. The archaeological evidence for this thermal management behavior comes from an unexpected source. Analysis of ancient hearth sites reveals patterns of fire use that suggest early humans were extending their periods of comfortable ground-level activity well beyond what natural temperature cycles would have allowed. By creating controlled fires during evening hours, they could have maintained comfortable terrestrial environments even after sunset, effectively expanding their daily activity budgets and creating more opportunities for social interaction and tool manufacture. These fire management strategies represent some of the earliest evidence of humans actively modifying their thermal environments rather than simply adapting to them. The ability to create comfortable microclimates through controlled burning would have provided enormous advantages for groups living in thermally challenging environments. Extended periods of comfortable ground-level activity would have allowed for more complex social behaviors, more sophisticated tool manufacture, and more detailed environmental planning. The social implications of these thermal management strategies were equally profound. Coordinating group activities around thermal cycles would have required sophisticated communication systems and shared understanding of environmental patterns. Group members would have needed to coordinate their movements to ensure that everyone was in appropriate thermal zones throughout the day, while also maintaining group cohesion and security. This coordination challenge would have been particularly acute for groups containing individuals of different sizes and heat tolerances. Larger individuals would have been more susceptible to overheating and might have needed to retreat from canopy environments earlier in the day. Smaller individuals might have been able to continue arboreal foraging during periods when larger group members were restricted to ground-level activities. Managing these individual differences while maintaining group coordination would have required remarkable social sophistication. Recent studies of modern primates in similar environments provide insights into how these thermal management strategies might have worked. Chimpanzees and other great apes show clear daily activity patterns that correspond to temperature cycles, with peak arboreal activity occurring during the coolest parts of the day and ground-level rest periods coinciding with peak heat. However, these modern apes lack the behavioral flexibility and tool use capabilities that would have been available to early humans. The combination of natural thermal awareness with controlled fire technology would have given early humans unprecedented control over their thermal environments. They could have extended periods of comfortable activity, created safe zones during extreme weather events, and potentially even modified local climate patterns through strategic burning and vegetation management. This thermal mastery may have been one of the key innovations that allowed early human populations to expand into environments that would have been unsuitable for other primates. The ability to create comfortable microclimates through fire use would have enabled human groups to survive and thrive in regions with more extreme temperature variations or less optimal natural thermal refuges. The anatomical evidence for thermal stress management in early human fossils provides additional support for this interpretation. Detailed analysis of bone growth patterns and dental development in early human remains reveals evidence of seasonal stress cycles that correspond to periods of thermal challenge. However, these stress indicators become less pronounced in later fossils, suggesting that early humans were developing increasingly effective strategies for managing thermal environments. The development of sweat-based cooling systems in early humans also reflects the importance of thermal management in human evolution. Unlike most other primates, humans possess highly developed sweating capabilities that allow for effective cooling during periods of intense heat or physical exertion. This physiological adaptation would have been particularly valuable for populations living dual arboreal terrestrial lifestyles in thermally challenging environments. The efficiency of human sweating systems suggests that thermal stress was a persistent and significant challenge throughout human evolution. The metabolic costs of maintaining such sophisticated cooling systems would only have been justified if thermal management was crucial for survival. The fact that humans invested so heavily in physiological cooling capabilities provides strong evidence that our ancestors were regularly encountering thermal challenges that required active management strategies. Modern research into human thermal physiology reveals remarkable capabilities that appear to be specifically adapted for managing the kinds of thermal challenges that would have been encountered in complex arboreal terrestrial environments. Humans can maintain stable core body temperatures across a wider range of environmental conditions than most other primates, and our cardiovascular systems show specific adaptations for supporting high levels of heat dissipation during physical activity. These physiological capabilities would have been particularly valuable for populations that needed to engage in energetically demanding activities, like tree climbing, during periods of thermal stress. The ability to climb effectively while maintaining thermal homeostasis would have provided crucial advantages for accessing arboreal resources during times when other species were forced to remain inactive. The integration of physiological thermal management with behavioral strategies and technological innovations represents one of the most sophisticated environmental adaptations in primate evolution. Early humans weren't just surviving in thermally challenging environments. They were thriving in them by developing multi-layered strategies that combined biological, behavioral, and technological solutions to thermal challenges. This integrated approach to thermal management may have been one of the key factors that distinguished early human populations from other primate species. While other apes were limited by their physiological capabilities and simple behavioral adaptations, early humans were developing complex, multifaceted solutions that allowed them to exploit environments and resources that were unavailable to their competitors. The success of these thermal management strategies is evident in the geographic distribution of early human fossils. Human remains from this period are found in a wide variety of thermal environments, from the relatively moderate conditions of forest margins to the more extreme thermal challenges of open savanna regions. This geographic diversity suggests that thermal management capabilities allowed early human populations to colonize environments that would have been unsuitable for less thermally adapted species. The temporal persistence of thermal management behaviors throughout human evolution provides additional evidence for their importance. Archaeological sites spanning millions of years show consistent evidence of fire use, strategic site selection based on thermal considerations, and behavioral patterns that correspond to thermal cycles. This consistency across time and space suggests that thermal management was a fundamental component of human survival strategies throughout our evolutionary history. The cognitive demands of effective thermal management would have provided intense selective pressure for enhanced environmental awareness, planning capabilities, and decision-making abilities. Successfully managing thermal environments requires detailed understanding of weather patterns, seasonal cycles, and the thermal properties of different microhabitats. The mental challenges of integrating this information with resource availability, predator risks, and social coordination would have demanded considerable intelligence and memory capacity. This cognitive complexity may have been one of the driving forces behind the rapid brain expansion that characterizes human evolution. The neural processing power required for sophisticated thermal management would have overlapped considerably with the cognitive abilities needed for tool use, social coordination, and environmental manipulation. The development of thermal management capabilities may have provided a foundation for many of the other cognitive innovations that distinguish humans from other primates. The social learning implications of thermal management strategies were equally significant. Effective thermal management requires detailed environmental knowledge that would have been difficult for individuals to acquire through personal experience alone. The transmission of thermal management knowledge from experienced to inexperienced group members would have required sophisticated teaching and learning behaviors that may have been precursors to the complex cultural transmission systems that characterize modern human societies. Archaeological evidence suggests that thermal management knowledge was indeed being transmitted across generations in early human populations. Sites show consistent patterns of fire use and thermal optimization that persist across multiple occupation layers, indicating that knowledge about effective thermal management was being preserved and passed down over long periods of time. The development of standardized thermal management practices would have required the evolution of communication systems capable of transmitting complex environmental information. The ability to share detailed knowledge about thermal patterns, optimal timing for different activities, and effective thermal modification techniques would have demanded communication capabilities more sophisticated than simple gestural or vocal signals. Some researchers have suggested that the cognitive and communicative demands of thermal management may have been important factors in the evolution of early human language capabilities. The need to share complex information about environmental conditions, coordinate group activities around thermal cycles, and transmit thermal management knowledge across generations would have created strong selective pressure for enhanced communication abilities. The technological innovations associated with thermal management also had far-reaching implications for human development. The controlled use of fire for thermal modification required sophisticated understanding of combustion principles, fuel management, and environmental safety. These technological capabilities provided a foundation for many later innovations in human technology and environmental manipulation. The mastery of fire technology for thermal management may have been one of the crucial steps that enabled later human expansion into non-tropical environments. The ability to create warm microclimates through controlled burning would have been essential for survival in the colder environments that humans encountered as they expanded beyond Africa. The thermal management skills developed in tropical African environments provided the foundation for the environmental control technologies that eventually enabled human colonization of virtually every terrestrial environment on Earth. Modern studies of traditional societies that maintain sophisticated thermal management practices provide insights into the complexity and effectiveness of these ancient strategies. Many contemporary hunter-gatherer populations continue to use fire, vegetation management, and behavioral strategies to optimize their thermal environments in ways that closely parallel the patterns visible in the archaeological record of early human sites. These modern examples demonstrate that thermal management strategies can be remarkably effective at improving environmental conditions and expanding the range of usable habitats. Groups that maintain sophisticated thermal management practices often show significantly better health outcomes and population stability than those that rely solely on physiological adaptations for thermal regulation. The persistence of thermal management practices in modern traditional societies also provides evidence for the deep evolutionary roots of these behaviors. The fact that humans continue to invest considerable time and effort in thermal management, even in modern environments with advanced technology, suggests that these behaviors address fundamental biological needs that have remained constant throughout human evolution. The study of thermal management in early human evolution has revealed that our ancestors were far more sophisticated environmental engineers than previously recognized. Rather than simply adapting to existing environmental conditions, they were actively modifying their thermal environments to better meet their physiological and behavioral needs. This environmental engineering capability may have been one of the key innovations that enabled the remarkable success of early human populations. The integration of thermal management with other aspects of early human behavior created synergistic effects that amplified the benefits of individual strategies. Effective thermal management enabled more efficient foraging, which provided better nutrition for supporting large brains and complex social systems. Enhanced cognitive abilities enabled more sophisticated thermal management strategies, which in turn supported further population growth and technological development. This positive feedback relationship between thermal management capabilities and other aspects of human development may help explain the rapid pace of human evolution during certain periods. Once early human populations achieved effective thermal management, they would have been able to exploit environments and resources more effectively, supporting larger populations and more complex societies that could develop and maintain increasingly sophisticated technologies and behaviors. The recognition of thermal management as a fundamental component of early human adaptation has important implications for understanding human-environmental relationships more generally. Humans have always been active modifiers of their environments rather than passive adapters to existing conditions. The thermal management strategies developed by our earliest ancestors established patterns of environmental manipulation and control that continue to characterize human behavior today, from the controlled fires of ancient African forests to the climate control systems of modern buildings. Humans have consistently sought to optimize their thermal environments through technological and behavioral innovations. The sophisticated thermal management strategies of our early ancestors provided the foundation for all subsequent human environmental control technologies, establishing patterns of environmental modification that continue to drive human innovation and adaptation in the modern world. The story of thermal management in early human evolution reveals that our ancestors were remarkably sophisticated environmental problem solvers who developed complex, multifaceted strategies for thriving in challenging conditions. These capabilities provided crucial advantages that enabled early human populations to expand into new environments and develop the technological and social innovations that would eventually lead to modern human civilization. Understanding the importance of thermal management in early human evolution also provides valuable insights into human-environmental relationships and adaptation strategies. The flexibility and innovation that characterized early human thermal management continue to define human responses to environmental challenges today, reminding us that our greatest strength as a species has always been our ability to actively modify and optimize our environments, rather than simply accept existing conditions. The legacy of early human thermal management strategies remains visible in virtually every aspect of modern human behavior and technology. From the clothing we wear to the buildings we inhabit, from the transportation systems we use to the energy technologies we develop, humans continue to demonstrate the same commitment to environmental optimization and thermal control that first appeared millions of years ago in our earliest African ancestors. This recognition of the deep evolutionary roots of human environmental engineering provides both perspective on our past achievements and guidance for future challenges. The same innovative thinking and environmental problem-solving capabilities that enabled our ancestors to thrive in ancient Africa continue to drive human adaptation and success in an increasingly complex and challenging modern world. The thermal management revolution that began millions of years ago in the forests of ancient Africa established patterns of human behavior and innovation that continue to shape our species today. Our ancestors didn't just learn to survive in challenging thermal environments, they learned to master them, creating the foundation for all subsequent human environmental control technologies and establishing the environmental engineering mindset that continues to characterize human responses to environmental challenges in every domain of modern life. Domain of modern life. The implications of these thermal discoveries extend far beyond simple comfort management into the realm of cognitive development and social organization. When we examine the archaeological record with thermal management in mind, we discover evidence for planning capabilities that seem almost impossibly sophisticated for creatures living millions of years ago. Yet the fossil sites tell an unmistakable story of environmental foresight that challenges every assumption about early human intelligence. Consider the strategic placement of early human campsites across the African landscape. These weren't random locations chosen for immediate convenience. Detailed analysis of site positioning reveals a consistent pattern of settlement in areas that provided optimal thermal refuges throughout daily temperature cycles. Our ancestors were selecting locations that offered cool morning shade, protected midday rest areas, and evening thermal comfort with remarkable consistency. The sophistication of this site selection becomes even more apparent when researchers examine the microtopography of ancient settlements. Early humans consistently chose positions that took advantage of natural thermal phenomena, like cool air drainage, morning mist collection, and evening breeze patterns. They were reading the thermal landscape with the skill of modern meteorologists, identifying locations that provided natural climate control long before they developed the technology to create it artificially. But perhaps most remarkably, these thermal considerations were being integrated with other survival needs in ways that reveal extraordinary environmental intelligence. The same sites that provided optimal thermal conditions also offered strategic advantages for predator detection, access to water sources, and proximity to diverse foraging areas. Our ancestors weren't just managing single environmental variables. They were optimizing complex combinations of factors that required sophisticated understanding of ecological relationships. Archaeological evidence reveals that early human groups were modifying these naturally advantageous locations to enhance their thermal properties even further. Careful arrangement of stones created windbreaks and heat sinks. Strategic clearing of vegetation optimized airflow patterns, controlled burning shaped local microclimates to extend periods of thermal comfort. These modifications represent some of the earliest evidence of landscape architecture in human history. The social coordination required for these environmental modifications would have been extraordinary. Creating effective thermal management systems required cooperation among multiple individuals over extended periods. Planning thermal modifications meant thinking ahead to future environmental conditions and coordinating present actions with anticipated future needs. The cognitive demands of this temporal planning represent a quantum leap in intellectual sophistication. Recent discoveries have revealed that some early human sites show evidence of seasonal thermal optimization strategies that span multiple years. Vegetation management practices appear to have been planned and implemented across growing seasons, suggesting that our ancestors were thinking not just days or weeks ahead, but potentially years into the future. This level of temporal planning requires abstract thinking capabilities that were previously thought to be much more recent developments in human evolution. The genetic evidence for thermal adaptation in early humans provides additional insights into the importance of temperature management in human evolution. Recent advances in ancient DNA analysis have begun to reveal genetic signatures of thermal adaptation that appear much earlier in human evolution than previously recognized. These genetic adaptations suggest that thermal stress was a persistent and significant selective pressure throughout early human development. Interestingly, many of these thermal adaptation genes are not simple physiological modifications, but rather genetic variants that affect behavioral and cognitive traits related to environmental awareness and planning. The genetic foundations for sophisticated thermal management appear to involve complex interactions between physiological, behavioral, and cognitive systems that work together to optimize thermal regulation. The preservation of these genetic variants in modern human populations provides evidence for the continued importance of thermal management capabilities throughout human evolution. Even populations living in relatively moderate climates retain genetic adaptations for thermal stress management, suggesting that these capabilities remained crucial for human survival long after the initial development of thermal management strategies. Modern neuroscience research has revealed that human brains contain specialized neural circuits for processing thermal information and coordinating thermal management behaviors. These neural systems are remarkably sophisticated, integrating information about current thermal conditions with predictions about future thermal challenges and coordinating complex behavioral responses across multiple timescales. The neural architecture for thermal management shows clear evidence of evolutionary optimization for the kinds of complex thermal environments that early humans inhabited. Human thermal processing systems are specifically adapted for managing the thermal gradients and temporal variations that characterize forest environments, providing neurobiological evidence for the importance of thermal management in human evolution. Brain imaging studies of modern humans engaging in thermal management tasks reveal activation patterns that involve some of the same neural circuits used for complex planning, social coordination, and environmental manipulation. This neural overlap suggests that thermal management capabilities may have provided a foundation for many other aspects of human cognitive evolution. The development of thermal management capabilities may have been one of the key factors that enabled the rapid expansion of early human brain size. The cognitive demands of sophisticated thermal management would have created strong selective pressure for enhanced memory, planning, and decision-making abilities. The neural investments required for effective thermal management may have provided the foundation for the remarkable cognitive capabilities that distinguish humans from other primates. Archaeological evidence from across Africa reveals that thermal management strategies continued to evolve and become more sophisticated over millions of years of human evolution. Early sites show relatively simple thermal optimization, while later sites demonstrate increasingly complex thermal modification systems that required advanced planning and sophisticated environmental engineering. The technological innovations associated with thermal management also show clear evolutionary progression. Early fire use appears to have been primarily focused on basic thermal comfort and predator deterrence. Over time, fire technology became increasingly sophisticated, with evidence for controlled burning, strategic fuel management, and complex fire-based environmental modification systems. The mastery of advanced fire technology for thermal management provided the foundation for many other technological innovations in human evolution. The understanding of combustion principles developed through thermal management activities enabled innovations in cooking, tool manufacture, and environmental modification that would prove crucial for later human development. Perhaps most importantly, thermal management strategies provided early humans with unprecedented control over their daily activity schedules. By creating comfortable thermal environments through technological means, our ancestors could extend their active hours and engage in complex activities during times when other species were forced to remain inactive. This temporal flexibility provided enormous advantages for technological development, social interaction, and environmental exploitation. The evidence suggests that sophisticated thermal management capabilities were well established by the time early human populations began expanding beyond Africa. The thermal control technologies developed in African environments would have been essential for survival in the more thermally challenging environments encountered during human dispersal to other continents. The thermal management strategies pioneered by early African populations provided the foundation for human adaptation to virtually every terrestrial environment on Earth. From the Arctic tundra to tropical rainforests, human populations have consistently used thermal management technologies to create comfortable living conditions in environments that would otherwise be unsuitable for human habitation. Modern climate research has revealed that the thermal management capabilities developed by early humans may be increasingly important for human survival in a rapidly changing global climate. The same principles of thermal optimization and environmental modification that enabled early human success in ancient Africa may provide crucial guidance for adapting to contemporary climate challenges. The study of early human thermal management has revealed that our ancestors were far more sophisticated environmental engineers than previously recognized. Rather than being passive victims of environmental conditions, early humans were active modifiers of their thermal environments who developed complex technological and behavioral systems for optimizing thermal comfort and expanding their environmental tolerances. This environmental engineering mindset established patterns of human behavior that continue to characterize our species today. From the earliest controlled fires in African forests to the most advanced climate control systems in modern buildings, humans have consistently sought to optimize their thermal environments through technological innovation and environmental modification. The recognition that thermal management was a fundamental component of early human adaptation provides important insights into the nature of human environmental relationships. Humans have never been simple adapters to existing environmental conditions. We have always been active modifiers and optimizers of our environments, using intelligence and technology to create conditions that better meet our biological and social needs. The thermal management revolution that began in ancient Africa established the foundation for all subsequent human environmental control technologies. The principles of environmental optimization, technological innovation, and behavioral flexibility that characterized early thermal management continue to drive human adaptation and success in every domain of modern life. Understanding the deep evolutionary roots of human thermal management capabilities provides valuable perspective on both our past achievements and our future potential. The same innovative thinking and environmental problem-solving abilities that enabled our ancestors to master the thermal challenges of ancient Africa continue to drive human responses to environmental challenges in the modern world. The legacy of early human thermal management extends far beyond simple temperature control into fundamental patterns of human behavior and cognition. Our ancestors didn't just learn to stay cool in hot environments. They learned to think systematically about environmental challenges, to plan solutions that extended across time and space, and to coordinate complex group activities around shared environmental goals. These cognitive and social capabilities provided the foundation for virtually every aspect of human civilization. The planning abilities developed for thermal management enabled agricultural innovations. The coordination skills refined through group thermal optimization facilitated complex social organizations. The technological thinking fostered by thermal engineering provided the basis for all subsequent human technological development. The story of thermal management in early human evolution reveals that environmental challenges have always been catalysts for human innovation rather than obstacles to human development. Our ancestors didn't just survive environmental difficulties. They used those challenges as opportunities to develop new capabilities that made them more successful and adaptable than any previous species. This pattern of using environmental challenges as innovation opportunities continues to characterize human behavior today. Whether developing new technologies for climate control, creating sustainable energy systems, or designing resilient urban environments, humans continue to demonstrate the same creative problem-solving approach to environmental challenges that first appeared millions of years ago in the thermal management strategies of our earliest ancestors. The thermal management revolution in early human evolution established patterns of environmental optimization that continue to define human success. Our ancestors learned that environmental challenges could be overcome through intelligence, cooperation, and technological innovation. These lessons provided the foundation for human dominance of terrestrial environments and continue to guide human responses to environmental challenges in an increasingly complex modern world. The recognition that thermal management was a driving force in early human evolution provides a new understanding of what makes humans unique as a species. We are not successful because we are the strongest or fastest creatures on Earth. We are successful because we learned, millions of years ago, to actively modify and optimize our environments rather than simply adapting to existing conditions. This environmental engineering mindset, first developed in the context of thermal management in ancient African forests, has enabled humans to thrive in virtually every terrestrial environment and to create technological civilizations that continue to expand human capabilities and environmental control. The thermal management strategies of our earliest ancestors provided the foundation for all subsequent human achievements and continue to inspire human innovation and adaptation in the modern world. The discovery that would finally shatter the last vestiges of the traditional savanna hypothesis came from the most unlikely of sources. Deep in the Afar region of Ethiopia, where Lucy herself had been discovered decades earlier, paleontologists uncovered something that defied every existing theory about human evolution. It wasn't a single fossil or a new species. It was an entire ancient ecosystem preserved in stunning detail, complete with fossilized leaves, insects, and even microscopic pollen grains that told a story no one had expected to find. The geological layers revealed an environment from 3.5 million years ago that was neither dense forest nor open savanna. Instead, it was something far more complex and dynamic. The preserved ecosystem showed evidence of rapid environmental fluctuations occurring over periods as short as decades or even years. Forests expanded and contracted in cycles tied to orbital variations and volcanic activity. Grasslands appeared and disappeared with changes in rainfall patterns. Rivers meandered across the landscape, creating temporary wetlands that supported unique plant and animal communities before drying up and moving elsewhere. This wasn't the stable, predictable environment that traditional theories had assumed. It was a landscape in constant flux, where survival required not specialization for a particular habitat type, but extraordinary flexibility and adaptability. Our ancestors weren't evolving in response to a single environmental pressure. They were developing strategies for thriving in a world where change itself was the only constant. The implications were staggering. If early human environments were characterized by rapid and unpredictable change, then the evolutionary strategies that led to human success weren't about adapting to specific conditions. They were about developing the cognitive and behavioral flexibility needed to adapt to any conditions. The hallmarks of human evolution, our intelligence, our tool use, our complex social systems, weren't responses to particular environmental challenges. They were responses to the challenge of environmental unpredictability itself. This revelation explained many of the puzzling features of early human evolution that had never quite fit traditional theories. Why did human brain size increase so rapidly compared to other primates? Because navigating unpredictable environments required sophisticated cognitive abilities. Why did humans develop such complex social systems? Because surviving environmental uncertainty required unprecedented levels of cooperation and information sharing. Why did human tool use become so sophisticated so quickly? Because unpredictable environments demanded flexible, adaptable technologies. The fossil record began to make sense in entirely new ways when viewed through this lens of environmental variability. The anatomical diversity visible in early human species wasn't evidence of different evolutionary strategies. It was evidence of populations rapidly adapting to constantly changing local conditions. Some populations developed more robust teeth for processing tough foods during drought periods. Others evolved longer limbs for more efficient travel between scattered resources. Still others showed evidence of enhanced climbing abilities for accessing arboreal refuges during times of terrestrial scarcity. But perhaps most remarkably, many populations showed evidence of developing all of these adaptations simultaneously. Rather than specializing for particular environmental conditions, they were maintaining broad repertoires of anatomical and behavioral capabilities that could be deployed as circumstances required. This biological generalism was unprecedented in primate evolution and may have been the key innovation that set the human lineage apart from all other species. The genetic evidence for this adaptive flexibility has only recently become available through advances in ancient DNA analysis. While African climates have generally been too warm to preserve DNA from the earliest human fossils, researchers have been able to extract genetic material from some more recent specimens and from modern populations whose ancestors lived through similar environmental transitions. The genetic signatures reveal something extraordinary. Early human populations maintained unusually high levels of genetic diversity compared to other primate species. This diversity wasn't random variation. It was structured in ways that suggest active maintenance of genetic variants that provided advantages under different environmental conditions. Populations were essentially maintaining genetic insurance policies that could be activated when environmental conditions changed. This genetic flexibility would have been crucial for populations living in rapidly changing environments. When drought conditions favored individuals with efficient water conservation abilities, genetic variants supporting those traits would have increased in frequency. When abundant rainfall created new foraging opportunities, different genetic variants would have been favored. Rather than evolving toward a single optimal configuration, early human populations were evolving to maintain the flexibility needed to respond to whatever environmental challenges might arise. The archaeological record provides additional evidence for this adaptive flexibility. Tool assemblages from early human sites show remarkable diversity, both within and between sites. Rather than developing standardized toolkits optimized for particular tasks, early humans were creating diverse arrays of implements that could be used for multiple purposes. This technological flexibility paralleled their biological flexibility, creating multiple layers of adaptive capability. The manufacturing techniques used for these tools also show evidence of remarkable sophistication. Rather than simply copying successful designs, early human toolmakers were experimenting with new approaches and continuously refining their techniques. The archaeological record shows clear evidence of technological innovation occurring much more rapidly than in any other species, suggesting that early humans had developed cultural mechanisms for accelerating the pace of adaptive change. This technological acceleration was made possible by advances in communication and social learning that far exceeded anything seen in other primates. The transmission of technological knowledge between individuals and across generations required sophisticated communication systems and cultural practices that could preserve and build upon accumulated innovations. The development of these cultural transmission systems may have been one of the most important innovations in human evolution. Recent studies of modern hunter-gatherer populations provide insights into how these cultural transmission systems might have worked. Many contemporary foraging societies maintain oral traditions that preserve detailed environmental knowledge across multiple generations. These knowledge systems include information about resource locations, environmental cycles, and adaptive strategies that can be crucial for survival during environmental crises. The sophistication of these oral knowledge systems suggests that early humans may have been maintaining similar cultural repositories of adaptive information. The ability to preserve and transmit environmental knowledge across generations would have provided enormous advantages for populations facing unpredictable environmental conditions. Rather than having to rediscover adaptive strategies with each environmental crisis, early human groups could have drawn upon accumulated cultural wisdom to respond more effectively to new challenges. The social organization required for maintaining these cultural knowledge systems would have been considerable. Effective cultural transmission requires not just individual intelligence, but complex social institutions that can preserve information, evaluate its reliability, and ensure its transmission to future generations. The development of these cultural institutions may have been one of the driving forces behind the evolution of human social complexity. Archaeological evidence suggests that early human social systems were indeed becoming more sophisticated during this period of environmental uncertainty. Sites show increasing evidence of activity specialization, with different areas designated for different functions. The scale and complexity of some sites suggests that early human groups were growing larger and developing more complex internal organization than had previously characterized primate societies. The coordination challenges associated with these larger, more complex groups would have created additional selective pressure for enhanced communication abilities. Managing group activities, resolving conflicts, and coordinating responses to environmental challenges would have required communication systems far more sophisticated than the simple signaling behaviors used by other primates. The need for complex communication may have been one of the key factors driving the evolution of human language capabilities. The timeline for language evolution has been a subject of intense debate among researchers, but recent discoveries have pushed the evidence for sophisticated communication much earlier than previously thought. Archaeological sites show evidence of symbolic behavior and complex information transmission that suggests our ancestors were developing advanced communication systems much earlier than traditional theories had proposed. The environmental pressures that drove these communication innovations were not temporary challenges that disappeared once early humans developed appropriate responses. Instead, environmental unpredictability appears to have been a persistent feature of African landscapes throughout human evolution. Geological evidence shows that environmental fluctuations continued to characterize African climates for millions of years, creating ongoing pressure for adaptive flexibility and innovation. This persistent environmental uncertainty may explain why human evolution proceeded so much more rapidly than evolution in other lineages. Rather than reaching stable adaptive peaks and remaining there, early human populations were constantly being challenged to develop new capabilities and strategies. The pace of evolutionary change was accelerated by the constant pressure to adapt to new conditions. The success of this accelerated evolutionary strategy is evident in the remarkable spread of human populations across Africa during this period. While other primate species remained restricted to specific ecological niches, early humans were colonizing virtually every available habitat type across the continent. Their adaptive flexibility allowed them to establish viable populations in environments that would have been unsuitable for more specialized species. This geographic expansion created new opportunities for cultural and genetic exchange between populations that had previously been isolated. The flow of genes and cultural innovations across geographic barriers accelerated the pace of adaptive change and allowed successful innovations to spread rapidly throughout the expanding human population. The evidence for this acceleration of adaptive change comes from multiple sources. Genetic studies show increased rates of evolutionary change in human lineages compared to other primates. Archaeological studies reveal accelerating rates of technological innovation. Fossil studies document rapid morphological changes that far exceed rates seen in other species. All of these lines of evidence point to the conclusion that human evolution was operating under different rules than evolution in other lineages. The key difference appears to have been the development of cultural mechanisms that could accelerate the pace of adaptive change. While other species were limited to biological adaptation, which occurs over many generations, humans were developing cultural adaptation mechanisms that could operate within individual lifetimes. This cultural acceleration of adaptive change provided enormous advantages in rapidly changing environments. The integration of cultural and biological adaptation created positive feedback loops that further accelerated the pace of human evolution. Cultural innovations created new selective pressures that favored biological changes. Biological changes enabled more sophisticated cultural innovations. This co-evolutionary process created a runaway dynamic that drove rapid change in both cultural and biological systems. The anatomical evidence for this co-evolutionary acceleration is visible throughout the fossil record of early human evolution. Brain size increased rapidly as cultural complexity created selective pressure for enhanced cognitive abilities. Hand morphology changed to optimize tool use as technological innovations became more sophisticated. Vocal tract anatomy evolved to support more complex communication as social systems became more elaborate. These anatomical changes weren't occurring in isolation. They were part of integrated adaptive packages that combined biological and cultural innovations to create unprecedented adaptive capabilities. The result was a form of evolution that operated much more rapidly and flexibly than traditional biological evolution, while maintaining the reliability and cumulative nature of genetic inheritance. This hybrid biological cultural evolution may have been the key innovation that enabled human success in unpredictable environments. By combining the rapid responsiveness of cultural adaptation with the reliability of genetic inheritance, early humans created adaptive systems that could respond to immediate challenges while building cumulative adaptive capacity over longer time periods. The success of this hybrid adaptive system is evident in the remarkable resilience of early human populations. While other species went extinct or suffered severe population bottlenecks during periods of environmental crisis, early human populations appear to have maintained stable or even growing populations throughout most of the period of environmental uncertainty. This demographic success provided the foundation for the continued evolution and expansion that would eventually lead to modern human dominance of terrestrial environments. The environmental challenges that drove these early innovations in human adaptation were not unique to Africa or to the specific time period when human evolution began. Similar patterns of environmental uncertainty have characterized many periods and regions throughout Earth's history. What made the human response unique was not the environmental challenges themselves, but the innovative adaptive strategies that early humans developed to cope with those challenges. The principles of adaptive flexibility, cultural transmission, and hybrid biological cultural evolution that emerged during early human evolution have continued to characterize human responses to environmental challenges throughout our species' history. From the initial expansion beyond Africa to the colonization of new continents, from the development of agriculture to the creation of industrial civilizations, humans have consistently demonstrated the same commitment to adaptive innovation that first appeared in response to environmental uncertainty in ancient Africa. This continuity between ancient and modern human adaptive strategies provides important insights into human nature and human potential. The qualities that enabled early human success in unpredictable African environments, adaptive flexibility, cultural innovation, and cooperative problem solving, remain central to human success in the complex and rapidly changing environments of the modern world. The study of early human adaptation to environmental uncertainty also provides valuable guidance for contemporary challenges. As modern human societies face unprecedented environmental changes and uncertainty, the adaptive strategies pioneered by our earliest ancestors may provide crucial insights for developing effective responses to current and future challenges. The environmental uncertainty that drove early human evolution established patterns of adaptive behavior that continue to influence human societies today. The emphasis on flexibility over specialization, the development of cultural mechanisms for preserving and transmitting adaptive knowledge, and the integration of individual and group adaptive strategies all remain central features of successful human societies. Perhaps most importantly, the early human response to environmental uncertainty demonstrated that challenges can become opportunities for innovation and growth rather than threats to survival. The environmental pressures that might have driven other species to extinction became catalysts for unprecedented evolutionary innovation in the human lineage. This transformation of challenges into opportunities has remained a defining characteristic of human societies throughout history. Whether facing environmental crises, resource limitations, or social conflicts, human populations have consistently responded by developing new technologies, social institutions, and adaptive strategies that not only address immediate challenges, but also expand human capabilities and opportunities. The legacy of early human adaptation to environmental uncertainty extends far beyond simple survival strategies into the fundamental patterns of human creativity and innovation. Our ancestors didn't just learn to survive unpredictable environments. they learned to thrive in them by developing adaptive systems that could turn uncertainty itself into an advantage. This ability to transform uncertainty from a threat into an opportunity may be the most distinctively human characteristic. While other species seek to minimize uncertainty and maintain stable conditions, humans have consistently sought to explore new possibilities and create new opportunities, even in the face of significant uncertainty and risk. The environmental uncertainty that characterized early human evolution established this pattern of innovation and exploration that continues to drive human development today. From the earliest experiments with fire and tools to the latest advances in technology and space exploration, humans continue to demonstrate the same willingness to embrace uncertainty and transform it into opportunity that first appeared in our earliest African ancestors. Understanding the deep evolutionary roots of human adaptive flexibility provides important perspective on both our species' past achievements and our future potential. The same qualities that enabled our ancestors to thrive in the unpredictable environments of ancient Africa continue to drive human innovation and adaptation in the complex and rapidly changing world of today. The story of early human adaptation to environmental uncertainty reveals that our greatest strength as a species has never been our ability to control our environment, but our ability to adapt creatively to whatever conditions we encounter. This adaptive creativity, first developed in response to the environmental challenges of ancient Africa, remains our most valuable asset as we face the uncertainties and opportunities of an increasingly complex future. The environmental uncertainty that shaped early human evolution didn't disappear once our ancestors developed effective adaptive strategies. Instead, it continued to influence human development in ways that established fundamental patterns of behavior and cognition that persist today. The legacy of learning to thrive in unpredictable conditions created a species that doesn't just tolerate change, but actively seeks it out as a source of opportunity and growth. This revolutionary understanding of environmental adaptability helps explain one of the most perplexing discoveries in recent paleontological history. In 2001, researchers working in the Chad Desert uncovered fossils that would fundamentally challenge every geographical assumption about where human evolution took place. The skull of Sahelanthropus chadensis, nicknamed Tumai, was found not in the eastern African Rift Valley, where most early human fossils had been discovered, but in the heart of what is now the Sahara Desert. The significance of this location cannot be overstated. For decades, scientists had operated under what was called the East Side Story hypothesis, which suggested that human evolution was primarily confined to eastern Africa. The discovery of Tumai completely demolished this geographical constraint, revealing that our earliest ancestors had spread across the African continent much earlier and more extensively than anyone had imagined. But the real shock came when researchers reconstructed the ancient environment where Tumai lived 7 million years ago. The region that is now one of the harshest deserts on Earth was then a lush paradise of lakes, rivers, and woodlands. Fossil evidence from the same geological layers revealed crocodiles, elephants, antelopes, and dozens of other species that painted a picture of abundant water and diverse vegetation. This wasn't a marginal environment where desperate creatures struggled for survival. It was an ecological Eden that supported thriving communities of early human ancestors. The environmental reconstruction revealed something even more extraordinary. The landscape where Tumai lived was characterized by the same kind of complex mosaic environment that had supported other early human populations, but with an added dimension of aquatic resources. Ancient lake shores provided access to fish, shellfish, and water birds. Seasonal wetlands offered different resources throughout the year. Permanent rivers created corridors of lush vegetation that connected different habitat patches across the landscape. This aquatic dimension adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of early human adaptability. Our ancestors weren't just managing the challenges of our boreal and terrestrial environments, they were also exploiting aquatic resources in ways that required entirely different sets of skills and knowledge. Successful aquatic foraging demanded understanding of seasonal fish migrations, shellfish reproduction cycles, and water bird nesting patterns. The cognitive demands of tracking these aquatic resources alongside terrestrial and arboreal opportunities would have been extraordinary. Recent isotopic analysis of early human teeth has provided direct evidence for this aquatic resource exploitation. Chemical signatures preserved in fossilized dental enamel reveal consumption of freshwater fish, mollusks, and aquatic plants, alongside the terrestrial foods that researchers had previously identified. This dietary diversity indicates that early humans were true ecological generalists who exploited every available resource in their complex environments. So here we are, at the end of a journey that's taken us from ancient African forests to the very foundations of what makes us human. And what have we discovered? That everything we thought we knew about leaving the trees was backwards. Our ancestors didn't abandon their arboreal past to march boldly into a terrestrial future. They did something far more remarkable. They refused to choose. For millions of years, our earliest ancestors lived as masters of multiple worlds, climbing through canopies at dawn, walking upright across forest floors by midday, and managing complex thermal landscapes with an intelligence that still shapes us today. They weren't transitioning from one lifestyle to another. They were creating something entirely new, a way of being that combined the best of every environment while avoiding the limitations of any single specialization. This story matters because it reveals the secret of human success. We didn't conquer the planet through strength or speed or size. We did it through adaptability, flexibility, and the revolutionary decision to keep our options open. The same qualities that allowed Lucy to swing through trees and walk upright, that enabled Ardi to navigate complex forest canopies while managing ground-level thermal challenges, those qualities live on in us today. From the rainforests, where people still climb towering trees, to the cities where we've built entirely artificial environments, we remain creatures of multiple worlds. We carry within our bones, our brains, and our behavior the accumulated wisdom of ancestors who learned that the greatest strength isn't choosing between possibilities, but finding ways to embrace them all. The next time you watch a child effortlessly climb a tree, remember that you're witnessing millions of years of evolutionary innovation. We never left the trees forever. We learned to live everywhere, simultaneously. And that, perhaps more than anything else, is what makes us human.